Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, where we bridge the worlds of the taboo topic of money with the woo-woo world of manifestation. We're your hosts, Chris and Jenny Schultz.
We're not just about dollars and cents around here. We're all about lifestyle design. You can be working towards financial independence while still living a life you love today.
Get ready for insightful conversations with guests who have embraced the FIRE movement by achieving financial independence and retiring early, as well as entrepreneurs and individuals who defied the norm and have paved their own way to a life they love.
Together, we'll explore the powerful connection between mindset, financial freedom, and living a purposeful life. And of course, we'll be sharing our own journey to how we carved our path to a seven-figure net worth before hitting the big 4-0. Are you ready to ignite your financial future? Then let's dive right in.
Welcome to the Manifestation and Money podcast, where your journey to financial independence and the life you love begins now.
Hey, it's Jenny here, and I've got a fun one for you guys today. You've heard me say before that at the end of the month, there are two ways to have more money, and that's either by earning more or spending less. And today we're going to tackle the latter with my guest, Mary Ann Steinquist. Mary Ann is a spending coach. She is passionate about helping women learn how to overcome the urge to shop by digging into what triggers people to shop and how to stop. She teaches people how to become unshoppable by stopping the spending before it happens. Welcome to the show, Mary Ann.
Thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this for a while, so thank you.
You're welcome. So can you please share a bit about who you are and your story?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Mary Ann Stenquist, and I am a spending coach. And how that came about is I struggled for years with overspending, and yet I always got the same two pieces of advice. It was, and if you've ever struggled with spending, the two pieces of advice, it's just stop spending or just make a budget. And I couldn't stop spending. It felt like a need, not a want. And I tried budgeting and it just didn't fix overspending. And so I read everything I could get my hands on in terms of finances. And I really wanted to learn to stop spending before it happened. But every time I would get into a book and they'd start talking about the dopamine and like why we buy, they'd just skip right over that and go into a budget. And I was like, no, like I really need to learn the psychology of spending. And I got desperate enough to type into Google how to stop spending before it happens, because I just couldn't figure out why I was spending, why it felt like such a need. And so when I couldn't find what I needed, I decided to just do my own research. And what I learned is what turned into my signature course and my mission to help women become unshoppable, to overcome the urge to shop. And it's changed my life, and nobody talks about it. And I just want to spread the word and the message because it's so crucial if we're wanting to create the life we want and dream about. Like we talked about, we either increase our income or decrease our spending. And the easiest thing to do is to decrease our spending.
Yeah, absolutely. And that term that you've coined, become unshoppable, what does that mean?
So I coined that term. I was working on a workshop and it was like, become unstoppable. And I was like, I love that phrase. And then it clicked with me and I'm like, become unshoppable. That's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I'm trying to teach others to do. And so it really just morphed into my whole mission and message that I've been passionate about for years. And what it means is to learn why you shop and how to stop. Spending is always separated into two categories, it's wants and needs. And I wanted to understand why it felt like such a need. And when I looked into the psychology of spending, there really is a science. It's a chemical reaction in your brain. An emotion is triggered, and we're not taught how to deal with our emotions. And so we don't recognize that emotion. We just feel uncomfortable and we want to escape it. And so we go to our phone, we go out shopping, if it's not overspending, it's overeating, it's over drinking. There's so many habits that we do to get rid of those emotions. Once I learned that, it was life-changing and it was money-changing, because it just made me realize that I have money, but it's just being spent unintentionally. And if I redirect that money, we can do a lot of things that we couldn't do because it was too expensive,
That just makes me think to the people that don't have enough time in their day Yet if they look back on their phone log and see how much time they spent scrolling, you're like, oh, I could have allocated that. So this is the same type of thing. Yes, you have the money. It's just getting frivolously spent on things that you don't necessarily even care about at the end of the day. It was just in that moment that you bought them, but that could be allocated to things that you really want to spend that money on.
Exactly. I love where you related it to if you look back on your phone, it's really easy to see where it's going. But what stops people from making these changes in habits, we know instinctively, I need to spend less time on my phone. I need to spend less money. But we're guilted into doing it, and that makes us not want to do it. And like the two things we don't want to do are diet and budget. Those are like the two things. For a while, I was very much like anti-budget. I was like, it's restrictive, it doesn't work. And I was just on this mission to defame the budget. And my husband was like, this has been working for people for years. You need to find a different avenue. And so I didn't want to restrict myself. I didn't want to feel restricted. And so instead of looking at where my money should go in a budget, I looked at where it was actually going. And that's where I saw all that money. And I was motivated. I was empowered thinking, wow, we want to take a trip every year. This money that I'm spending unintentionally could have afforded us 3 trips this year. And it was like that switch was just so empowering, and it made me want to spend less, save more. And that's where Money Make Under originated. It just developed into this become unshoppable mission.
Mm-hmm. Anytime you can come from a place of empowerment where you feel in control, you have the choice, you get to decide the next steps, the place of empowerment, that can change like any kind of habit or lifestyle change that you're trying to make in your life realistically, hey?
Yeah, it's the most powerful. And that's another thing. I really wanted to harness the power that I felt to shop. I was like, this is such a powerful urge. It's not a want, it's a need. There's got to be a way to harness this because it's in our body, it's within our brain. And I realized that it actually is possible. You just have to understand the reaction that happens, and nobody talks about it.
And what were some of your personal triggers for you with spending and buying?
For me, I learned all of this way too late, but for me, it was I'm an emotional spender. So my need to be recognized, to have self-esteem and respect, that was not being met. And I had gone from full-time working as a speech language pathologist to part-time to full-time mom. And I felt my worth was what I did in my career. And when that all ended, I felt like I didn't have that like same respect that I did in the workforce. And being a mom is no less worthy, or I mean, it's even more so, but I just didn't feel that way. I wasn't getting that need met. And so I have chronic health conditions, I had depression. It was just a whole combination of things. And I turned to shopping because shopping's cheaper than therapy, right? And I'm always like, no, not my shopping. Like we say that as an excuse when really it's not. I'm a huge advocate for therapy. For me, it was that trigger of needing to get my emotional needs met. And it was to feel better about myself than I did. And so I would buy clothes, I would buy accessories because I wanted to look like I felt good on the inside. I wanted to present myself in a certain way. I had this image in my head of this woman I saw when I was in the OBGYN office, and she just was like the image of perfection. And I just looked at her and I was like, she has it all together. And I knew nothing about her, but like that image was, I think, what really drove me to, I want to be that person. Which was ironic because as I was shopping for these glory, and it wasn't like luxury items, it was at Ross, TJ Maxx, but they add up. And I was wanting to achieve this appearance and image, and yet I was shopping in sweats and slippers. So instead of becoming that person myself, it's easier to buy it. It's easier, and our brain wants to do the easier thing. It's like, should I solve my unmet need or in all of life's problems, or should I go shopping? It's going to choose shopping. And we have no barriers for that anymore.
Yeah. So how do you go from that place? Because that just sounds almost like an automatic, this internal instinct that you want these things. So how do you detach yourself from those triggers?
So you said what triggers you to spend. So I've identified 6 primary spending types that kind of explain why we buy, what triggers us to buy. For me, it was an emotional spender, and I call them the 6 spending types. And so for each person, it's different. The necessity spender, they feel like they need security, and so they buy only needs, but they tend to buy like overbuy, like stockpiling and storage, because that's really secure. That's security for them. The bargain buyer is buying lots of things, but it's the price that determines what they buy. And for them, the security comes in saving money on things that they're going to use. And so there's different types. And so I have a spending types quiz that's free, and it really helps identify your primary spending trigger, because when I tried to fix my spending, it was so overwhelming. It's like, where do I start? And so when I identified these characteristics in my own spending, I went, this has got to be not just me. This has got to be like with everyone that struggles with overspending. And so I made these questionnaires and sent them out, and I got really good feedback. And so that's how it developed into a quiz. And that's where I recommend people start, is they identify their spending type, because you know deep down what your weakness is. You just don't necessarily know what's causing it. And the spending type quiz helps guide you to that and tailor your plan to that.
Okay, that's really fun. We'll link to that in the show notes so that people can go take that quiz. I already am getting a feeling as to what kind of spender I am just from listening to you, but it'll be fun to take it to see if in fact I am on track with that.
For sure.
And you said like reading finance books to you that they don't really address overspending other than to say stop spending or make the budget, but that doesn't actually help the root cause of the overspending. So what do you think the missing link in those books is?
That's a great question. And this may seem obvious to some, but I didn't get this concept until I actually started doing my own research. So good money management is a balance between saving and spending. If you can't stay within your spending limits, you won't be able to save. And so that's why my budget wasn't working, was because I viewed budget as like a saving focus, and I wasn't meeting it. It wasn't the budget's fault. It was because I was overspending. And so it really needs to be, and that may be conveyed, but not in my world. It wasn't clear to me. And so the missing link was, you need both. You need to address saving and spending to achieve your budget. And there needs to be like a caveat, like if the budget isn't working, and I mentioned this to you before, it's not a logical problem to be solved. It's an emotional issue to be addressed. And that's what it was. Dr. Beakey, I believe, said. And he said, the reason for failure, I wrote it down because I just love this, sums up what I've been teaching and feeling for years. The reason for failure is not the lack of a plan, willpower, or responsibility. Failure is due to the approach, seeing spending as a logical problem to be solved, not an emotional issue to be addressed. And that's what I kept running into with the budget. And I was trying to fix it logically. And logically, it worked out on paper. But like spending doesn't happen logically. It doesn't happen on paper. It happens in the store with very real and raw emotions. You have that item in your hand, and we can convince ourselves very easily that a want is a need. And so the budget goes out the window as soon as you walk into the store. And so that's where I really wanted to give proactive tools about how to stop spending before it happens. And it comes with addressing that emotions, those needs that aren't being met. And all of the 6 spending types tie back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. That is why our brain is triggered with this emotion, is it recognizes that a need is not being met. And in hunter-gatherer days, it was food, shelter, survival. Most of us don't have those needs. Those are needs that are being met, but those instincts are still being triggered. We just don't know how to deal with them, because it's like, I'm technically safe. Something's missing. I've got to fix it. And so we think we know how to fix it by spending and getting our need met other ways with unhealthy behaviors, when really it's just putting a Band-Aid over the problem. You need to address that need that's not being met.
Yes, and so you're going back to the fight or flight almost like type mentality of us. And now we're living in like the Amazon Prime days, where you literally be like, I want this thing, click the button, it shows up on your doorstep before you can blink. we don't
Right.
have a fighting chance, it feels like, against our primal
Right.
instincts.
Exactly. And the interesting thing is, Brent Kessel, his book, Not About the Money, he summarized it so well. He said, we think, our brain thinks that it's the object that brings us that happiness, when actually it's the lack of wanting. For that brief moment, you have what you want. It came, the excitement came, you have what you want, nothing else. And then as soon as that wears off, you're wanting again. And so the happiness didn't come from the object. And we think that the need is being met when we buy that thing we've been wanting, when really it's just we met a temporary need, but we're just going to want to fill it with another need and another need and another need until we get to or another want, I should say, until we get to that unmet need and the core.
Wow. But yeah, that goes deep then.
Yeah, it really does. It's really, and I'm like, why is no one talking about this? This is how you solve the problem. And if you can't solve it, you get pretty darn close, because everyone's different. And for me, I can't give a timeline of once you implement this, you fix your spending overnight. For me, it was simply because I've been struggling for years and I've tried everything and research, and I just was looking for why. And as soon as I found the why, and as soon as I found it's within my control, it was like I was off to the races. But the first step is really recognizing, am I happy with my money and what I'm spending on? Do I feel in balance? And balance is going to look different for everyone. And I know with your community, it's very much like fire, early retirement. And so that is a huge motivator. And a lot of really good spending habits can be developed if you have that long-term goal in mind. But sometimes, because it can be almost too long-term, you can get discouraged and get off track, because it's like, I'm so far behind that mark that I need to meet, that number I need to meet. So for everyone, I always recommend, if you decide not to buy something, you need to physically or write it down, physically move it to another account, write it down, keep track of it, because you need to see the progress being made towards your goal. If you don't see progress, you're going to go back to square one. You're going to go back to just spending because it was more enjoyable, it was more fun. And if we don't see that progress, it's very demotivating. And so I always recommend, before even tracking your spending, I'll go into that a little bit, but I always recommend just having a goal, and like your heartfelt desire is really like what you want to be searching for, not the desires of the wanting mind.
That really makes a lot of sense. So how can people who know that they're overspending take a proactive approach to learning what their triggers are and how to work through them?
So I would definitely recommend the spending types quiz, simply because I created it to help you identify one area of spending. It is way too overwhelming. I tried to address every single spending area, and it became a start, stop process. And so that's why I simplified it into one quiz result, one area, and then I guide you through in my free community how to do that. But if you're wanting to do it on your own, if you're like knowledgeable about money and I feel like I just need a step, give me something to do and I'll do it, then I would recommend tracking your spending habits. Now, this is different than tracking your spending like traditional budget recommends. Traditional budgeting, you track your spending, you write the date, you write where you went, and then you write the amount spent, right? Mm-hmm. With spending habits, you're writing the date, the store, what your intended errand was. So let's say Walmart, I was going for groceries. What unintentional purchases did I make at Walmart? And for me, it's usually like a candy bar, a cookie, a cute decor item, things that I wasn't planning on. They were unintentional. And that's not reflected in a total amount. You just see Walmart, $200 spent, and you think that just goes into your grocery category. But you really see that these unintentional purchases creep up everywhere. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's just important to start with one area, and then you can it's like wildfire. It's like you realize that one area and it's like, oh, wow, I'm noticing this. I'm noticing this. So it brings that awareness to you. And that can be so empowering to be like, this is within my control and I want to control it. And for those that are listening that may not have the be in the fire movement with the early retirement, even if you have just a goal to, I don't know, like even this sounds simple, but my husband and I have wanted to just go on date nights to plays. We love plays, we love shows, and we've always just said, "Oh, it's too expensive. It's too expensive." And our goal has been like our dream of owning a new house is that's like a wanting mind desire. Like we would love a new house, but it's a little out of reach and it's like really expensive. But something that is within reach, your heartfelt desires of I really want to spend quality time with my spouse and go to these plays, like that is a heartfelt desire. And we just said, no, it's too expensive. We just write it off and say, no, it's too expensive. If you have that heartfelt desire, they're usually very achievable and very affordable. We just get caught up in, oh, I want the new car and the new things. It's very affordable, and you can redirect that unintentional money and meet those heartfelt desires. And you'll find that, and what I found is that new house that we wanted is now not even on the table because we've found other things that are fulfilling to us. We've found that instead of, like for me with clothes, instead of clothing, I want to use that money and redo my closet and make it like a walk-in closet so I can actually enjoy the things I have. And instead of buying a new house, we want to just make some less expensive renovations to our house to make it more convenient, to make it more homey. And so you start realizing that like your dreams are totally within reach if you just do that. Brent Kessel is the one that does the guided meditation on heartfelt desire versus wanting mind. And so that's his content, but I love it because it really helps you realize that this is within your reach. And once you have that strong motivator, lit the fire within you, I mean, sky's the limit. You can do amazing things with your finances, even if you're limited.
I'm so glad you touched on that because yes, we love the FIRE movement and we're working towards financial independence, but we are also huge advocates for living the lifestyle today that you want to live. And yes, it doesn't necessarily mean you're going on these lavish cruises every second month. Realistically, happiness is spending time with the people that you want to spend it with, doing the things that you want to do. And like you touched on, usually those things don't have a huge price tag to them, or it's an achievable thing that you can be working to, which is more satisfying than reflecting back on your story earlier of looking like that lady who had that image that you wanted that didn't quite fit who you actually wanted to be. So I'm glad you touched on that. Yeah.
And I love that you brought that up too, because you said live the life today that you want to live. And that was never in the family I was brought up in. It was like you work toward retirement and then you can relax, then you can enjoy your money. Mm-hmm. And I read the book, The Money Trap, in trying to figure out like all this information. And he said, instead of waiting for retirement to live your dream life, why not? Oh, no. It's like, I'm going to misspeak his quote, but it's like, why not live a life that you don't want to retire from? Mm-hmm. I was like, that just changed my mindset totally. Mm-hmm. I was like, that is really important because I think for a long time, we've all been taught to just save. And I think generationally and with how accessible shopping is, that's not the goal anymore. The goal is to enjoy it. That's where the YOLO, you only live once. That's where that like coin turns. And so there needs to be a balance, but live the life you want to now and use the money that you have now. And don't be searching for that big break. Like we were for years, my husband and I, like we make good income and didn't have anything to show for it. And it was so frustrating. And we would have to wait for windfalls like his bonus or the stimulus checks. And that boosted our checking. And then we would spend it all. And it's been interesting. We've had just like $15,000, $20,000 in medical debt. And our emergency fund has gotten us through 2 years of just everything wrong going wrong. So huge proponent for that. But what's been interesting is I've felt so much more security because I know that we don't have to wait for a windfall to save us. We are implementing these strategies now that weren't being implemented before, that we'll be okay. We are saving money now And if we have a hard month, it's okay. We fortunately haven't had to resort to credit cards, and we've been very blessed that way. But I think there's so much power and security in that you can't buy security with any item you think you want. You buy security with financial security, and that gets lost with spending. Ironically, money is very important to me and many people, but we spend it. And so we need to find the balance for us. And where I approach things is that I tailor it to each person, because what's important to me is very different than what's important to you and other people. It's not a cookie cutter, one size fits all. It's very individualized, and it starts with your spending type. And then in my free community, I can help with my free trainings, guide you to that. I have a course that I'm launching, best gift you could give to yourself and your spouse. I'm super excited about it. There's nothing else like it out there. And I can say that because I've tried everything out there. I'm pretty close to everything, and they just don't talk about the psychology and stopping spending before it happens. If you're interested in learning more, take the quiz, join the free community. I'm all about serving and about presenting information, because that's what I lacked, is information. And money management is all about finding what works best for you. And another goal of mine is just break down those taboo walls of talking about money and the shame around spending. I felt so alone and so ashamed of my spending, and it's just not talked about, and it needs to be. And so I want my community to be a safe space, and I'm very open about my spending is not, and saving is not an uphill trajectory. It's like up and down all around. And so I just want it to be a safe place for anyone to join and just feel like they're not alone. I just am passionate because I want everyone to become unshoppable and stop being at the mercy of the advertisements and marketers, because they know why we shop better than we do. And I'm wanting to harness that information and take the power back and teach it to everyone else.
Yeah, I get that. So what is the biggest piece of advice that you have for someone who is trying to create a lifestyle that they love?
I would say, and you mentioned that, and it got me thinking. And we're all on social media, all of us, all the time. And if it's not social media, it's like Pinterest, or it's some kind of social influence. And what's interesting about social media is, in the olden days, it used to be keeping up with the Joneses. Now you're keeping up with the entire world, and they're all on social media. And I heard it said once, I can't tell you where I heard it, but they said, use your envy and jealousy and reframe it as showing you what's possible. And I love that, because I've found myself like, oh, they're taking all these trips and cruises, and oh, how can they afford that? Take that as an opportunity to be like, I want that for my life, and let's do it. So that's a good way to reframe the doom scrolling of, and like getting jealous and like buying those ads that come up. Get a very clear idea of what you want for your life and make it visual. I have a screensaver on my phone, and this office is a reminder of what I want to do in my home. So make it visual, make it top of mind. And it goes beyond just deleting things from your phone. You have to really do that soul searching. And so as far as first steps, I would say assess your heartfelt desires and what you really want, and things that are achievable or that can be achievable in a few months, and start working towards that. And you'll be surprised. We're not good at comparing values. So if we see something that's half off, it's like, oh, it was $20, now it's $10. That's our comparison. We're not good at just seeing one thing and seeing the value. And so I want you to compare everything you're thinking about buying to that heartfelt desire and be like, which one do I want more? And you'll be surprised. You'll probably pick the longer, not the instant gratification, the delayed gratification. And it will be more gratifying, but just to feel in control. That's ultimately what I've learned, is that I'm not cured. It's an issue every day, but I don't feel like shopping controls my life and spending controls my life. And it's just so empowering. And I feel like I'm on my way to becoming unshoppable. And I just want everyone to join me in that, because it's such a freeing concept.
That is lovely. And speaking of everybody joining you, where can listeners reach out and actually connect with you?
Yeah, so my free quiz, the spending types quiz that I mentioned, is on my blog, Money Make Under. So MONEY, money, make under MAKEUNDER.com. And that main page has the quiz. You can click on it. It'll take less than 5 minutes. You'll get the results sent to you of what your spending type result. And then in that email, it will have links to the free Facebook community. And that's where I am very active, and you can ask questions and come live, things like that. So that's the best way to get in touch with me. So I can't wait to see you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for joining me on the show today, Mary Ann.
Yeah, thank you, Jen.
Thank you for joining us on another episode of the Manifestation and Money podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation and want to continue your journey to financial empowerment and creating a life you love, be sure to subscribe, rate, and leave a review.
Come follow us on Instagram at Manifestation and Money Podcast or at 4Leaf Lifestyle for more inspiration and behind the scenes content. Remember, your life is yours to live. Your financial freedom journey is as unique as you are. So hop in the driver's seat. It's time to create the life of your dreams.